We did it before and we can do it again, and we will do it again.
In Louisiana, many towns boast traces of a valiant home front effort in World War II. The state had 10 airfields from Barksdale up north down to Houma on the coast, where aircraft patrolled the Gulf for submarines. We didn't hear much about it on the radio at the time. All news of military work was hushed to some degree. Stories are only now surfacing of all the training done in our backyards. In Baton Rouge, Harding Field launched skilled pilots. Some called them barnstormers because they showed such bravado.
Harding Field was born of necessity. Just before the outbreak of World War II, the government and the military here were poised, ready for action, because Hitler was running rampaging through Europe with these Nazis. The Japanese were running rampant through China and Asia, Burma. And so just to be prepared, they started building a military airport here. The main purpose primarily at first was just to safeguard the industrial corridor in this area, all the plants along the river.
The refinery in Baton Rouge.
The refinery, of course, and then it evolved into a fighter-bomber training base. It grew.
Historian Billy Spidell has written Heroes of Harding Field, a book about one pilot training ground in Baton Rouge.
The headquarters was established in the old state capitol building downtown until the base was finished. So that was where it all began, and the building where the South seceded from the nation. They named it after a World War, after a Louisiana war hero who was William Wadley Harding, native of Shreveport, a young lieutenant that was killed on maneuvers just prior to Pearl Harbor.
One of the pilots who trained here is Quentin Annenson.
You don't forget a day like D-Day. And that was my first combat mission. I hardly knew what was going on, except that as I looked down as we crossed the English Channel, and our point of target was over Point du Hoc, which is famous where the Rangers scaled the cliffs. Omaha Beach was right to our left. As I looked down and saw that massive channel filled with ships, and looked around me in the sky and saw planes all over, and all I was trying to do was hold my wing position, follow my leader, turn my gun switches on at the right time, arm my bombs, watch out that I didn't fly into anyone. You'll never forget that. It was scary, but it was a moment in history that I wouldn't have missed for anything, as long as it had to be.
Spidell remembers being 10 years old and watching pilots train over Baton Rouge. It was exciting for a boy, but too often he witnessed tragedy.
Which it was common back then, crashes. They crashed everywhere. One P-47 made a belly landing on the Baker High School football field right up the middle. They fell everywhere, in the river, across the river. Most of them were forced landings. Two B-17 four-engine bombers collided, and I saw that one. I watched them going through the death throes in the air with smoke trailing from this four-engine B-17. Saw the three parachutes in the air. Then I saw something coming down real slow. It looked like a falling leaf. Didn't know what it was, but I ran toward it with some of my buddies. We crossed fences and lawns and yards and got to it. It was the tail section, complete tail section of a B-17 bomber. Huge. It blew my mind. It was so big. And it landed, luckily, right behind a house. It almost hit the house, right behind the back porch of a house on Plank Road.
With the skills he learned at Harding Field and some luck, Quentin Annenson made it through the war in Europe.
I wrote a farewell letter. This was in late June of 1944, and I had only been in combat for about 6 weeks, but it was apparent that already the law of averages was coming up on me. I wrote it after one of my close friends bailed out after he had been hit by flak. He bailed out on our side of the lines, and his parachute didn't open, and we watched him fall 8,000 feet. So when I got back to my tent that night, I sat down and wrote 2 farewell letters. I left instructions with my friends that if I were killed, these letters were to be mailed. We all did that. The sad thing about it is that I had 3 different people set up to mail my farewell letters if and when I was killed. I ended up mailing all of theirs. All 3 of them were killed. So finally I just left almost to whom it may concern. If I'm killed, mail these.
Annenson was one of more than 325,000 Louisianans serving in military ranks.